Thank you all. Thank you for having this tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Seth Fleetwood. I'm running for State Senate in the 42nd District. I served you previously on the Bellingham City Council and the Whatcom County Council. I was born and raised in Bellingham. I'm running on a theme of trying to end extreme partisanship in Olympia. Government, in my view, is not working terribly well. The two great parties aren't communicating. They're not respecting each other. They're not making substantial progress on some of our thorniest issues. Issues involving fully funding transportation. We failed to pass a transportation package, which I think is a shame. We lost hundreds of jobs in this community because of that failure. We're under a Supreme Court mandate to find close to $4 billion to fully fund education. And I think we haven't fully recovered from the recession. My opponent cites the fact that they got out of the last legislative session with a nearly unanimous vote as evidence of bipartisanship. But of course, everyone that was down there recognized that they were punting for the next session, recognizing that the thorniest problems went unresolved. He cites the fact that they found $1 billion for education. What he fails to say is that they did a bunch of one-time fund transfers, skimming from other places where there was money needed, which accounts for that. It wasn't sustainable. He cites the fact that there was a tuition freeze, which is something that both parties supported, but what he fails to say is that we still have some of the highest tuition for college in the entire country. We still have some of the largest classroom sizes in the entire country. He touts the fact that they passed oil by rail safety, but he doesn't mention the fact that it never even passed in point of fact. But he cited that as some of the best example of the best legislation in the entire nation. It didn't even pass. So I'm running on a theme of ending extreme partisanship, trying to build coalitions with people from both sides of the aisle, restore what we once had, which was moderation and the ability to compromise, a constitutional principle, I might mention, so that we can make substantial progress. Thank you very much.
You get a run-on sentence at the end, too.
Oh, right. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Try not to take it. Hey, well, thank you all so much for coming out tonight. I'm Doug Ericksen. I serve as your state senator. It's an honor and a greatly challenging job. Thank you to the Tea Party for hosting the event here tonight. First off, a little bit about myself. I've been serving the legislature for quite a few years now, and it's a great job. My wife, Tasha, is a school teacher in Bellingham. My daughter, Elsa, is a freshman at Ferndale High School. My other daughter, Addie, is a 7th grader out at Horizon Middle School in Ferndale. Ferndale is a great place to raise a family, and we love it living here in Whatcom County. I think Tasha and I truly epitomize what it is to be middle-class Americans. We understand how increasing energy costs impact a family. When the propane bill goes up, we have to cut somewhere else. We understand how taxes going up can impact a middle-class family. When property taxes go up, when sales tax go up, we have to cut somewhere else. So I understand that. Tasha and I get it because we live it every single day. But it's a good challenge. It's a great place to be. And we're working hard together to make a better community. And that's what's so wonderful about Whatcom County. It's a special place. And we can never lose sight of the fact that up here in the fourth corner, we truly are unique compared to Washington State. And we do things different, and I believe we do things better. I will talk about the Majority Coalition Caucus in Olympia because Mr. Fleetwood keeps talking about the need for bipartisanship. What is more bipartisan than having a bipartisan Majority Coalition Caucus made up of Republicans and Democrats that come together? And it's not just on one vote, Seth. The leader of the Senate is a Democrat. The President Pro Tem is a Democrat. Democrats are co-chairs the Transportation Committee and chair the Ag Committee and chair the Banking Committee. That's bipartisanship. The Majority Coalition Caucus is coming together as a bipartisan group to do things. And yes, we did have the most bipartisan budgets in the history, not in the history, I got the numbers, since somebody might ask. Our general fund budget in 2013 was 44-4, the most bipartisan budget since 1949. The 2014 supplemental budget was 48-1, the most bipartisan since 1955, and the one Democrat who voted against it, this is the irony, is the kicker, voted against the budget because it didn't include a tax loophole for a company in his district.
First question goes to Mr. Fleetwood first for 2 minutes. Currently, state tax revenues are increasing at 7.4% per year, roughly $3 billion. Personal income growth is increasing at less than 2% per year. Do you see this difference as a problem? If so, how would you solve it?
Whew. It's a tough one. How would I solve it? Well, as it relates to revenue, I think one of the things that was mentioned earlier, one of the ways that we can increase revenue in Washington State, which clearly we need, I'm afraid to say, as I mentioned, we're under a number of mandates to increase funding in a lot of very important areas. How we go about doing that precisely is a difficult question that will take a lot of work. But one of the key ways that we could do that is through closing some important corporate tax loopholes. That's a fundamental difference between my opponent and myself. It was mentioned earlier that there's over 600 corporate tax loopholes in Washington State, and we need to review them and identify which ones are no longer meeting their stated purpose. I support the review of doing that. Clearly, there are some that could be considered for closure. My opponent, and tell me if I'm wrong, is opposed to closing any of them or looking at closing any of them. That's one important
You're wrong.
Okay, good, good. You've been in Olympia for an awful long time, and so you would know, and I respect that. So yes, it's a concern. That's one of the means by which we could go about addressing it.
Well, first off, let's take a look at tax revenues coming to the state of Washington. And first off, they're taxes, and the state doesn't have revenue, we have taxes, because we take money from the people. Businesses have revenues, the state has taxes. And we anticipate the people of Washington State sending in over $3 billion of additional taxes for our next general fund budget. So think about that for a second, $3 billion more coming in, and yet you have people saying they want more, raise taxes, raise more taxes on working families in Washington State because we need it in Olympia? No, prioritize spending, invest in priorities, and we can get it done. That's what we did with the Majority Coalition Caucus. We said we're going to balance the budget without raising taxes, and we did it. And we set priorities, and we funded K-12 education and no college tuition increase for the first time in 30 years, and those are good things, and we did it without raising taxes. And by the way, he calls them corporate tax loopholes. I call them jobs for working families in Whatcom County, because if you eliminate those tax incentives, jobs will go away, people will be laid off, and that'll be bad for Whatcom County.
You have 1 minute.
Well, you made reference to a particular tax loophole. What I support is a process by which we review tax loopholes that can be closed. I support that. You implied a particular example. I think that was a fear tactic as it relates to, well, which one were you implying? You just said that I support something that would lose jobs.
You've referenced numerous tax incentives you like to close with the Cherry Point Industries.
Haven't, actually.
Oh, well, name a couple. You want to get to $4 billion, let's start ticking them off.
Okay, I don't know. What expressed support for is the idea of reviewing over 650 tax loopholes. I think that's an important thing. I think we could find millions of dollars that corporations should be paying in taxation.
Question 2 taps an issue we've already addressed somewhere tonight. Water quality, quantity, and availability have become some of the most important issues in Whatcom County and the state of Washington. Who should control our local aquifers, the state, the tribes, or local boards and councils? And is there a collaborative process that will manage our water resources now and into the future in a fair, equitable, and just manner without creating winners and losers? Senator Ericksen has 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Describe water utopia in 2 minutes and how we can achieve it in Whatcom County. In 1998, before I ran for the legislature, I worked over the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and there were 2 pieces of legislation that went through that year. One was sponsored by then Representative Kelly Linville for the WIRA process, the Water Inventory Resource Area, to bring people together in a collaborative process to try to achieve exactly what you just said. The other bill was by Representative Buck out of the Joyce area, which was the strategic pathways methodology to identify salmon passage barriers and remove them. Things coming together with water. So in Whatcom County, we're blessed with a lot of water. We need to make sure that we have the rules in place to be able to utilize it effectively and efficiently. That's where we have to start from. Unfortunately, water has morphed into control controlling growth, controlling people, and controlling different things. So we have to address the issue of water for the issue of water itself. Now, Representative Byes and myself have been holding hearings on the issue of how we start addressing some of these issues directly in the North County. One of the ideas that we've worked at very closely is this idea of taking deep water wells in the Birch Bay area and Blaine area and moving the water across the North County, both for quality issues and for quantity issues. This is an issue that we should pursue going forward. We're making progress, we're working together, but we have to realize it's not just about control. We have lots of water in Whatcom County. We have to make it work, and we have to bring people together to get it done with creative solutions. And that's what we're going to do going forward.
Yeah, I think this is an area that calls out for leadership, frankly. I was on the Whatcom County Council during the time that we were implementing the Watershed Protection Act that Doug referred to. And we went through a very lengthy process trying to bring together stakeholders from all sides to resolve this issue. We created an action plan that hasn't been implemented yet. It's a really difficult issue between the municipalities who need to plan for accommodating future growth, between the farmers who need reliability and certainty in their water availability, and between the tribes and fish for in-stream flow. And we've seen little snippets of effort for one particular area or another, but what we haven't seen is somebody bringing all of those interests together and resolving this issue once and for all.
Just really quickly, it's such a complicated issue, but there are a couple issues I think the people at home in Whatcom County need to know. Exempt well means exempt well, and I will work very hard to protect the landowners of Whatcom County on their exempt wells so they won't be taken away or metered. Agriculture is crucial to Whatcom County. If we lose agriculture, we become just another place, and we cannot let that happen, and I will fight to make sure that water is made available to our farmers so that they're able to farm in Whatcom County and continue operating here. So those two things, you got to start from the fundamentals of what needs to be achieved. You're protecting the private water right for those landowners, and we're going to make sure water is available for our ag farmers so it stays here forever.
Question 3 goes to Mr. Fleetwood first. Money spent on political campaigns is at an all-time high, both locally and nationally. What reforms would you support to increase the influence of local individuals and reduce that of outside money?
I would support a very active effort at creating campaign finance reform. The amount of money that's coming in for special interests in this country and that we're seeing in this race itself is really an obscenity. And I think we need to do something to get over that. Both sides receive just hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I think that needs to be addressed. So I would support looking at a fair and equitable means of coming up with campaign finance reform. Unfortunately, we live in a country where any side that perceives the other as gaining any advantage by any proposal immediately expresses opposition to it. So we have to create some kind of process by which we negotiate a fair system of campaign finance reform. As it related to the Citizen United reference or implication from the earlier debate about corporate personhood, I think that that's another thing that would be very successful in restoring our democracy in this country, is overturning corporate personhood and removing just obscene amounts of money from campaigns, because it buys influence, and we need to do something about that.
It is an issue that needs to be handled. I don't have any billionaires from California sending me big checks, so it is an issue I think we should probably try to get a handle on soon. But the bigger issue we need to address, and this is one for a seminar at Western, how constitutionally we protect free speech. And people like to beat up on corporations and say, how do I get the money out from corporations? How do I get the money out from these unions? Well, what about individuals that come together to form a group that want to participate in the public process? Are they then limited and excluded from the process? Is that fair? Is that the way it should be? And what you're doing, what the court really did was they interpreted free speech broadly, not narrowly. And the Tea Party, better than anybody else, knows how the federal government can be abused through the IRS and through other activities. So if you trust the legislature with the ability to come in to choose who gets speech, who doesn't get speech, that becomes a very slippery slope. And I have seen the legislative process not work very well in that capacity, where certain partisan groups try to take advantage, limit the speech of some, expand the speech of others. I would err on the cost of greater free speech and go against the risk of the legislature being able to pick winners and losers and favorites in this particular process.
We're now equal in run-on sentences.
All right.
30 seconds. Well, as I say, I think it's just sort of self-evident and obvious that we need to do something about money in elections and campaigns. It's just, there must be a better way. And I know there are examples that one can find throughout the world of having a more fair campaign system. As far as corporations, I don't want to vilify corporations. It's just a form of business organization that has great effect and benefits that I don't deny. As far as the billionaire reference, I'm not seeing any of that money. You're the one who's received 2/3 of your money from corporations and business PACs. So you're the one that's getting the benefit of that sort of thing, not me.
Question 4 goes to Mr. Ericksen first. Do you favor right to work, and should it apply equally to public and private sector employees?
That's a good question. I understand completely the role for the unions in private sector employment. I think at certain times and in certain places it's not always helpful. I can look at Whatcom County here. One of the most desirable places to work is out at the BP Cherry Point facility, which is non-union. Phillips 66 is a union facility, so they can coexist, side by side in that capacity. But people love to work out there at BP because they pay well, and it's a great place to work at. I think on certain situations, I believe in freedom for the individual also, where the individual has the right to be able to join or not join. And I think you can tie it back into this issue with regards to campaign contributions, where my wife's a public school teacher, must join the union, must pay the dues, and those dues can then be used for political purposes, which she may or may not agree with in all situations. And I know they'll say, well, you can opt out. Well, it's very difficult to do and very time consuming. So I have issues about that. I believe in freedom. I believe in freedom of people to make choices that are best for them. And that's where it becomes very difficult when you say to a person, we believe in a free country, but in order to have this certain job, you have to do X, Y, and Z, give money to this organization. I have trouble with that in general, but I think that we will work our way through that issue and make sure that we're doing the right decision to make Washington State a good place to create jobs.
I have no great expertise in right-to-work legislation. It's not something that I've reviewed in any great depth. What I do know about it causes me to be opposed to it simply because of the limitation it has on the right to organize. I agree with Doug about the freedom to make decisions. However, my grandfather was a small business Republican who he was a embalmer, a service embalmer in Detroit for many decades. In fact, he got into a fight with Jimmy Hoffa, who in 1948, who was trying to convince him to unionize. My grandfather didn't want to, and so I kind of like that fact that my grandfather stood up to Jimmy Hoffa. But but I'm not inclined to favor right-to-work legislation as I understand it.
Last word? You have one more minute.
On the issue?
On this issue.
I think I covered it.
Okay. You get the first closing statement. 1 minute.
Who opened up here? I think Seth opened, so I get to close, right?
You get to. He spoke first on opening. You speak first on closing.
Oh, I thought you get a kick receiver, defend a goal when you on the coin toss. Makes no difference. Hey, thank you all so much for coming out here tonight. It's a great testament to democracy, and yet again showing how Whatcom County is truly a special place where good solutions come from. I mentioned it earlier in my comments, but I want to reiterate it. When you travel around the state and you see different legislative districts, they aren't all like this one, where we are so diverse in our nature, but we come together around solutions and bring them to Olympia. whether it's on agriculture, water issues, fishing issues, timber, healthcare. You see so many ideas and so many solutions coming forward from this community because that's the kind of people that we are, and it's a great honor and a great challenge, to represent this legislative district. It is a lot of good people. But going forward, I think we have to look at some fundamentals. Number one, I'm a free market person who believes in lower taxes. We need to protect independent businesses and make sure we're reducing regulations so the owners of small companies can spend more time with your customers and less time with the government. That's job one for your legislators. Control taxes. We should require a 2/3 vote of the legislature if we're even going to think about raising taxes on the people of Washington State, because 65% of the people of Whatcom County want it. That should be the rule when we go down to Olympia. We need to make sure that we're looking at the red card, not having run-on sentences. So I just want to say I appreciate you all being here tonight. It's going to be a great campaign. I'm focused in on solutions and issues, and in the coming months, you're going to see a lot of stuff on the TV. I've told my wife to cancel the TV, subscription, but I'm going to focus on solutions and not throwing mud, because the people of Whatcom County deserve us to be focused in on things that will work and benefit them.
You can have a minute and a half.
Well, that's all right. I, too, would like to thank you for having this. This is a great forum, a great turnout. We do indeed live in an absolutely spectacular place. It's one of the greatest places in the world. I've spent my time in local office on the Bellingham City Council and the Whatcom County Council, trying to identify problems and issues of public concern and finding creative, thoughtful ways to solve them. I've always worked with people of differing points of view to try and build coalitions so that we can make progress. I think that we've got serious problems in Washington State. If people think that government's just clicking and working great, okay. I think it's not, clearly. That's 15 seconds or 30? Okay, I should have had that down. We've got problems in education. We've had a failure to pass a transportation package. We've still not got back to pre-recession levels of jobs. There's just an awful lot of work that we can do. And I look forward to the opportunity to serve you in the Washington State Senate. So thank you very much.